Jeg skulle elske en af det.
Der er måske nogle ting, vi godt kunne glemme.
Ja, du kan jo ikke passe det.
Det er jo lidt det, jeg mener vel. Jeg synes bare ikke, vi behøver at smide hele ugen.
Vi kan jo ikke glemme.
Original Forever y os voy a presentar a los miembros del equipo que me acompañan. En orden, desde la otra esquina hasta aquí, están con nosotros Jonas, productor de la película, METTE MUNK PLUM, actriz, FRELLE PETERSEN, director, JETTE SONDERGAARD, actriz y SORENSEN, actor de la película. Abro el turno de preguntas directamente y si no hay ninguna empiezo yo con una primera. Mira, pues aquí hay una primera.
Hi there. Hi. My first question is for the director. There's a bunch of topics covered that I thought they were interesting. One being how sometimes people mourn in incompatible ways. Another one being how sometimes you feel like you're betraying the person who's gone if you try to move on. Is there any particular thing that triggered all this project? Is there one particular idea that was the center of everything else?
Yeah, it started with a family I know who lost a son, and at one point we were at a party with a lot of people, and I asked the mother if how things were going. I talked a little bit about the son, and then she said a little bit later that evening, she said, I really appreciate that you always talk to me about our loss and about our son. And I was kind of surprised by this statement, and obviously the family have experienced that a lot of people around them feel it's a bit taboo talking about the loss, and I asked if I could meet with the family, and also I was curious about how does life go on after you suffer from this tremendous loss. So when I did that, the conversation that evening with the two two siblings and the parents, we ended talking a lot about how they experience grief in different ways and how hard it was in the family. And so that's how it all started for me, and then I began to do a lot of research with other families who have experienced losing a young one.
No sé si hay alguna otra pregunta. Sí. Pues...
I have another question. It's about the last scene. As a person who hates roller coasters with a passion, I wanted to know how that went. Did anybody throw up or scream or something?
Take that question. So his friend actually works in the Tivoli, and he actually runs the roller coaster. So he was driving it. And the first time we do a take a lot of times, and the first time around, he went with the normal speed, and we were all just screaming our heads off, and we could not act at all because we were just scared for our life. So he was able to actually slow the roller coaster down just a tiny bit, which made it possible for us to run it like 8 times, I think that was. So yeah, nobody threw up. It was all good.
Yeah. And I was sitting in the cart right in front of the actors with a monitor and had to look down all the time. And from the first trip, I was sitting like, so I didn't see anything. But luckily it worked out.
No sé si hay alguna pregunta. Mira, Alicia aquí.
Gracias, hola Desi. Quería preguntaros por el tema precisamente del humor en la película, porque es tan dura y es tan delicada, es tan profunda que se agradecen mucho los pájaros en esta película. Y también me gustaría saber un poco si hay diferencia o si trataste con algún tipo de diferencia la muerte de una persona joven. O sea, si hubiera sido diferente la película si la persona que muere no hubiera sido una persona joven. Gracias.
Yeah. And I was sitting in the cart right in front of the actors with a monitor and had to look down all the time. And from the first trip, I was sitting like, so I didn't see anything.
Gracias.
filmen havde været anderledes?
Nå, hvis det var en ældre.
Og så de brug af humor i filmen.
Thank you. Well, I think the film is very much about the different grief process, and much of that is similar. But for me, I've never experienced a loss of a young person. I lost my grandparents, whom I loved very much. But I can't imagine how hard it is to go through losing a young person. So definitely comparing my own experience with grief to the families that I met during my research, it's not comparable. So yeah, it would have been a different film if they lost the grandmother, for example. And that doesn't mean that that in a way there's a difference in grief, because yeah, it's something we all is going to experience at some point, and sometimes it just gets even harder. And about the humor, in South Jutland, where we come from, I think we always have a great sense of humor. And it's, yeah, I guess it was important for me to show all the facts of life, all the different stages of life, and you can be sad at 1 minute, and 5 minutes later someone can surprise you, and it can break out in laughter, it can make you mad, and I wanted to have that in there, and also as a part of telling the story of people around the family who are not comfortable about talking about the loss. So it was a great way to both get humor and to show that side of the people, yeah. Sure.
No sé si hay otra pregunta. Alicia.
Gracias. No, quería hablar con la actriz que hace el papel de la madre, porque creo que su dolor, que es toda la película hacia adentro, llega un momento en que estalla. Entonces quiero que me hable del dolor como madre en esta película, porque el padre y la hija se acompañan, se arropan, pero ella está como muy sola. Me gustaría que hablase de su experiencia.
Yes, me, yeah, okay. Yes, I felt I should be on my own after my son died. I tried to put myself in her sorrow, in her grief. And I think me personally, I couldn't have controlled my grief as she did, but I understand her very, very much. Because I think this grief of losing a son or a daughter, it's unbearable. And I think I understand her very much, that she needs to work her grief away. And also that it's actually impossible. I talk with FRELLE a lot about it, because I remember from the early start you told me about a mother. FRELLE traveled around and talked to various mothers and fathers about their grief. And especially one story I thought a lot about was about a mother who had been effective from the very day nearly, and from the funeral she was effective. Can I help you? Do you want some more coffee? Being in the role of the hostess, And I was thinking a lot about that. So, yes, I put the role on her. Yeah.
¿Hay alguna otra pregunta?
Hola, a mí me ha gustado la elipsis que se utiliza del rostro del hijo con la canción a pasar directamente a un momento en el que ya ha fallecido. No se representa en ningún momento cuando muere, ni cómo reacciona ante la muerte, ni por qué muere siquiera. Directamente pasamos al duelo posterior. Entiendo que esto evidentemente es una decisión de guión. No sé si siempre lo planteaste así, si barajaste otras alternativas como mostrar la reacción de los familiares cuando muere y si optaste por esta opción porque fue así. A mí me ha parecido buena idea, pero bueno, me gustaría saber por qué optaste por esa elección.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was from the very beginning important for me not to explain the cause of death. And yeah, before I started writing the screenplay and doing the research, I realized every time I met with some new people who've lost a young one, it was very much about the grief process, the individual grief process and what it does to a family, and that really interested me. But of course I knew how their son or daughter died, but I felt if I would explain that, the cause of death in the film, that would be very specific for this family, and I would give the audience a chance to be a part of this journey with the family members left behind, and also not just to tell the specific story about maybe it was an accident, maybe it was illness like cancer or something like this, then it would become more specific and I would be afraid that it wouldn't connect as much to the audience on an emotional level. So quite quickly I decided that. I talked to Jonas, my producer, a lot about it at one point, and so did we during the research process, because I knew it would be a bold choice, but we felt it was right. When we talked a lot about it, it felt like something we should do. So yeah.
One of the things I really loved about your script was exactly that you did not point it out, because this way so many more people could actually relate and just look at the different ways of grieving and see themselves reflected back in that, and not just, well, he died of that. So I thought that was so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yo quería preguntarle a Ole y a JETTE, ya que METTE sí que ha hablado un poquito de su personaje, que aunque cada personaje de la película vive el duelo de una forma distinta, es verdad que la apuesta del director y de la película en sí misma es contarlo todo desde la calma, ¿no? Es una película en la que no hay grandes estallidos dramáticos, todo es muy contenido y está muy en calma. Y me gustaría saber esto a nivel interpretativo, cómo lo abordasteis como actores, ¿no? Esta contención todo el rato ante situaciones de un dolor, ante una situación de un dolor extremo como es la pérdida de un hijo.
Yeah, I can start to answer. I was very good guided by my director, FRELLE, because I have not the experience to lose a son. That's special and must be really hard to lose a son. And the father and the son was very good connected about making coffee. So the father and the son, he expected the son to go further with the shop. So for him was it a total shock to lose his son, and he just made a church in his little house where he could talk to him, but kept his grief by himself a lot of times and connected with JETTE, his daughter, because they could talk about it. So that's the way I see it, the father's and the son's connection. Okay?
I can't actually remember the question.
No, la pregunta era que los personajes, aunque vivan el duelo, la pérdida de formas distintas, es verdad que la película siempre se mantiene como en un tono muy, muy de calma, ¿no? Sin que haya grandes estallidos dramáticos, ¿no? Intentando contar las cosas de una forma muy cotidiana y muy tranquila. Y mi duda era un poco eso, cómo a nivel interpretativo habíais trabajado vuestros personajes, porque no debe ser fácil, ¿no? Hablar de algo tan duro, de un trauma tan increíble desde la calma, ¿no? Un poco desde...
But yes, I think actually it's terrible to say, but I think a lot of marriages, it's really, really tough to... They were friends, they were pals, they were very good man and wife, and I think it's an awful challenge, if you can say it like that. But when we did it, when we made the film, of course, it was my job to see it from the mother's side. And she was trying to be effective and do as every day should be, hold tight up in the rhythm of every day to lock out the sorrow of her. And he was doing exactly the opposite. So I understand, my goodness, he was so irritating. She thought so. And actually, a lot of times, FRELLE had to hold back in my temper, because a lot of times I got maybe more mad with him than...
You should.
FRELLE wanted the film as a story that was everyone's story. It's the mother's story, it's a daughter's story, it's a father's story, it's the audience's story, it's everyone. I have met people seeing the story from my point of view, from the mother's point of view. Although it was a man I met, he said, but it's exactly the way I felt. I couldn't take it in. I went around years before something exploded in me. And I've met also the other point of view, the people who were in grief for years. But yes, I understand very much from the mother's point of view, because that was my challenge. So, and they could have been divorced on it, I think, but they didn't, luckily.
I feel extremely privileged to have been able to be a part of telling this story and looking at grief in a way. And I am so happy that FRELLE, and I think that was what you were thinking, that FRELLE decided to keep it realistic, and not plather it with all kinds of wild outbursts and stuff, but actually he did his work, and he sat down, he thought about how will normal people react. And as he said already, it is an up and down. I've had close family members who lost a young child, and it's up and down. And some days you meet them and they are just doing what they are normally doing. Other days they are really, really, really sad. And the only thing you can do as someone close to them is to try and be there where they are and meet them in their feelings, and it's really hard. And I love that he told the story in such a realistic way to show what life actually is. Yeah. Thanks.
No sé si hay alguna otra pregunta aquí.
Bueno, enhorabuena por una película tan delicada y un tema también tratado. Y os quería consultar con respecto a vivimos una existencia cada día más individual, del individualismo, y me sorprende mucho el espíritu de comunidad que hay en esta película, de familia y de comunidad, con los vecinos, con las personas de alrededor. Y la verdad es que, no sé, os quería preguntar si en realidad en Dinamarca, en Jutlandia, lo que comentabais, es esto una cosa de allí, si esto sucede también en Copenhague, porque me da la sensación de que en una ciudad, una cuestión tan globalizada como la que vimos ahora mismo, sorprende mucho este tipo de cine tan de comunidad. Gracias.
Thank you so much. Yeah, well, I've tried now to live for 21 years in South Jutland and then 20 years in Copenhagen, and there is a difference in the way that, and I guess it's always like that all around the world. If you live in a big city with a lot of people, you might not know your neighbor very well, but if you live in South Jutland or a local community like this, where you do have a lot of the sports arena where they go to meet and see sports, and the local shop where the customers from the local community will stop by, and they're not only there to buy coffee, they're also there to gossip and to talk about their lives. So it's very authentic portray of South Jutland. I can definitely recommend living there if anyone. It's a nice community, and I always feel that there's a great connection among the citizens, and that makes it more obvious when you lose someone and then suddenly they are not there. There used to be this strong connection maybe to your neighbors, and then you experience that they walk on the other side of the street to use the other sidewalk just to not have this conversation, feel the anxiety, and that becomes very painful. I've talked to families in grief all over the country, but that was one thing that stand out in the local community to have experience like this. So, yeah.
No sé si hay alguna otra pregunta. Aquí, Alicia.
Sí, me preguntaba un poco, bueno, sé la importancia que tiene el café en Dinamarca, que es todo el rato está la gente tomando café. Y aquí sorprende mucho porque no entendemos que no estén todos completamente histéricos todo el día, pero fenomenal, cada uno. Nosotros tomamos cañas que nos van también muy bien. La cosa, el café. Luego, esperaba por lo menos que esta criatura pudiera tener un niño, ya que ha perdido a un hermano, cosa que tampoco sucede. Y la tercera cosa que me ha resultado muy curiosa es que ella se dedique a cuidar niños con síndrome de Down. Y todos esos puntos que son como tan de montaña rusa, ¿no? Están hilvanados y van haciendo como una pequeña ola, ¿no? Como arropando esta historia. Y me gustaría que me hablase de esos 3 puntos que para mí son muy importantes. Gracias.
Yes. Well, the coffee comes from my very big passion for coffee. I drink it a lot. But I used to work in a pet store with my father when I lived in South Jutland before I became a filmmaker. And some of the things happening there, instead of coffee, we always had a fight about dog food. I wanted to try to sell the new dog food, but I couldn't because the customers wanted the old one, because the dog was happy for that. And I thought about what should this be, and I decided on coffee, and also this skill of coffee making, because it's always been like sometimes in Danish news we hear about that things doesn't really develop when it comes to the outcasts places. But we don't experience that, because where we film at the roast thing, where they roast the coffee, that's a place down there. And of course there's just as big as an interest in the difference in coffee also in that part of the country. So that's also a statement from my side. And and what was the other one, sorry, besides the coffee? Oh, yeah. Vil du tage den, eller?
Sí, preguntaba sobre el por qué hay toda esta trama sobre el intento de ser madre de uno de los personajes y que al final no sabemos cómo avanza, o sea, que podría haber sido como una especie de final feliz, ¿no?, ante alguien que pierde un hermano y tiene un hijo, y hay esta decisión de dejar abierta esta trama. Pregunta sobre eso.
Ja, hvorfor valgte du?
Vil du, eller skal jeg?
Nej, gør du bare.
Yeah, well, I did some research also with couples who had a hard time getting pregnant, and I realized quickly that I wanted to tell this story with grief in about a year, that there was like a year going with grief. Basically taken from when I talked to families, they said, it's not like things get easier, but you have to live your life, you have to go to work, you have to get up in the morning and do all these practical things. And usually it takes something like 6 to 12 months, and you get like a more natural, everyday life again, but the grief will always be there forever, the title. And when I did the research about trying to get pregnant, usually it would take more years, and the most important thing for me is to keep the story naturalistic and realistic. So I thought that would be a wrong ending already to show there that she's pregnant, just to give the audience a feeling of something is good. Something is a happy ending, but that's not really the case here. This is a very realistic story about how it is to experience grief, especially losing a young one. So yeah, I didn't want to explain that in the ending. So, but I think very much that they will have a baby at some point. And I've actually had audience members also say that they've seen signs that she is pregnant. I think 3 places someone says that she might be. But that's what I really love. I love to not give all the answers. I want to invite the audience to be part of the story, and they can fortolke.
Yo quería preguntar...
They can interpret, interpret what they experience. So, yeah.
And what they want to have happen.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an opening.
Yeah.
Og hun mener, at du så straffer hende i virkeligheden 2 gange.
Oh.
Håbet er der jo, håbet er jo ikke.
Yeah, but the hope is still there and is alive. But yeah, it's...
I think it's one of the things that actually makes Lily and her husband also get through it. And the rest of the family is this hope they have. So you have something to work towards. It will never, ever take any of the grief away from losing her brother or them losing their son, but it's a hope, and a new baby would, of course, be fantastic for everyone. So.
Yeah. Someone dies and someone is born. Yeah.
A mí yo creo que sería una pena tener a todo el equipo de la película y no preguntarle también al productor, a Jonas Bagger, por su decisión de implicarse en esta película, ¿no? Tengo la sensación de que es un momento de muchos cambios en el cine y que no hay tantos productores ni productoras que apuesten realmente por historias tan complejas, con tantas capas y que aborden temas que al final, independientemente de la manera en la que los abordes, son temas duros, ¿no? Como el caso de la pérdida y del duelo, ¿no? Mi sensación un poco al ver la película es que es una peli en la que todos los miembros del equipo han creído profundamente en la historia, ¿no? Se siente como una peli que nace realmente de una comunidad de gente creyendo en una historia, en unos personajes, pero sí que me gustaría como productor, ¿no? Que al final quieres que tu película se vea a lo máximo y que las películas funcionen, la apuesta, ¿no? Por esta peli, ¿por qué decides embarcarte en este proyecto en un momento en el que parece que hay como una apuesta mayor casi por un entretenimiento más ligero de alguna forma, ¿no? Y es una peli profunda, una película muy humanista y una película que evidentemente habla de cosas interesantísimas y con las que convivimos a diario, pero lo hace de una forma muy, muy seria, ¿no? Y muy contundente de alguna manera.
Thank you. The question being whether it would be easier to do a more commercial film with a happy end, basically. Well, the reason I thought this project was fantastic was because of the auteur, FRELLE. I've been seeing his films and he's obviously extremely talented. And we wanted to give him total freedom. And as you say, there's a lot of the part of the industry that is very focused on high-speed, very easy, readable feature films and TV series. But we are in our part of the world very fortunate that we are able to actually finance films that are from the inside out. It's coming from the director, from the screenwriter, in this case being the same person, and not from what the audience would like to see, basically. So it's all about supporting FRELLE and his idea, and this film being about grief is like it's a really, really bad pitch to try to sell, but it's of course hooked up on this artistic way of telling it. It's all about the way you tell it. When you read the script, and if you doesn't know FRELLE's style, you would think this is what's in it. Why do we want to care about this? But as soon as you understand the artistic way of telling this story, it all makes sense. And it's been very easy to work with FRELLE. And what we wanted to do was also to make sure that this third film FRELLE made, that he didn't go into this very commercial machinery. We have a lot of talented people around us in the film industry, producers included, and all kind of artistic people. And I wanted to make sure that none of them were dominating the film too much, because film is a collaborative piece of work, but it's very important to support the director these days in being very, very strong around his ambition. So basically, when we casted the crew around us, they all very easily went into the idea that they should kind of like step one step back and just let FRELLE's vision prevail in all parts, in the production design, in the way we shoot it, in the sound design, and I really think we managed that. That's my feeling, to keep it as a FRELLE film. And FRELLE actually did the editing himself, which is also extremely important, that there was not a second artistic person coming in to interpret the story, but to keep it very close to the director. And when FRELLE writes, he is editing it at the same time, and when he shoots it, he is editing it at the same time in his head. So it makes totally sense, and I really hope that we can continue working like this, supporting films that are auteur-driven, even though the market is very, very commercialized, also in good ways, but we need both sides of filmmaking.
No sé si hay una última pregunta. Sí, pues aquí.
Hi, Hi again. My question is mainly for the actors, but maybe also for the director. While watching this film, I was thinking, this is really sad. This is really hard. So if it's making me sad, who I'm just watching, I can't imagine what you guys were going through. So how do you cope with that? How do you deal with having to pretend to be really sad for all day, every day, for however long the shooting goes?
Yes, that's difficult too. Yes, I know, but FRELLE had made some guidance for us because he knew and he know how to show our grief when we are taking the shoot. And sometimes, even because I'm an actor from the scene, and I wanted to really make my crying on the... But FRELLE also always said, don't do that. Keep it. So therefore I knew when the film was finished, I had the experience and I knew it was very good, and I knew that the sorrow went inside and not outside. So you as an audience could see all our grief just to watch us. So that's FRELLE's way to make it. That's I'm very glad for. Yeah, that's my way to work. Yes.
You're thinking about how it takes a toll on us, having to go through those emotions every day and take for take. And yes, of course, it's hard. But you have a script for a really long time, and you read it and you read it and you work it out, and then you talk to FRELLE if he's on the same page as what you were thinking you want to do in the scene. And it becomes a sort of part of you, but you still have to be able to put it aside when it's said cut, because maybe the next scene is we're laughing. So it is hard, and it's hard to navigate in, but in all of our preparations, and he's really good also at being a partner in all of that work, you kind of have to like box it a little bit in your head and then pull it out when you need it. But yeah, some days were longer than others.
But we had some laughing in between.
Yes.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You have to, or else you would
yeah,
die. Yeah.
That was important.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, for me, I knew that it could be quite a challenge to put the actors into this state of mind they had to be in. But luckily, everyone is amazing talented, and had a great concentration when doing the scenes, but also managed to find the moments, you know, just the personal connection in between takes or in between scenes, which I think is important. And in general, on a film set, I very much appreciate that there's a great work environment, a happy environment, and even though we are...
Actually, no BS, sorry, but it actually does make our jobs easier when there is a sense of community and a good vibe, because then they relax, we relax, and we can just work together with everyone around us, because we do. Yeah.
And a great thing is we all live together for many weeks shooting, because we shoot in South Jutland, and most of us live in Copenhagen, and but still we stayed, everyone at a hotel, and we ate dinner together every night, and a lot of people stayed for the weekends as well, cast and crew, and it just gives a certain feeling, and it makes it easier to work with a material like this that is also very emotional. Yeah.
But I just want to say, we maybe not have talked about that, but we are all, us and FRELLE too, from the south of Denmark. So we have a kind of way to communicate, a special way. We know each other because we come from the same area. And that makes something, I'm sure, about to do this film.
Mm.
Definitely.
No
I
sé si-
think, I think it was really tough some days, being in the sorrow again and again. And but I learned, as you can see, I'm quite old, so I learned way back from in the acting school that it was very important every day, whatever you had been working with, to get it out, to work it out. Some people work it out with their bodies, doing training. Some people, I walk a lot. I like actually like the mother I come to think of. But it's very, very important, because then you are also, of course, our breaks in between, lunch break or whatever. It's important to laugh. Laugh gets the sorrow out, and it sort of releases your mind and your body. So it refreshes you. And although you're going in and do another sorrow, grief scene, you are sort of refreshed. So it's very important to get out and in and out and in, if you understand what I mean.
And then we ate a lot of cake.
Yeah, we did. And my mother, she baked all the cakes in the film.
Very good.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But also, actually, while just shooting the film and looking at the scene, it was very emotional for me as well. Even though, I think a lot of stuff, technical stuff, and have to decide to give some directions. And but it every day was emotional. And while editing the film, sometimes sitting for several weeks almost by myself, some days were actually really, really tough. And I had to come back to some scenes and just, try to find the right way to tell the scene.
I just have to say also, we are actors, so we can imagine how it is. So we finish the job every day. We are not sad all night and day after. We are actors, okay?
Bueno, si no hay ninguna pregunta más, yo creo que con esta aclaración, con esta bonita aclaración, podemos dar por cerrada esta rueda de prensa. Muchísimas gracias al equipo de la película. Felicidades una vez más por vuestra increíble película. Gracias a vosotros y un fuerte aplauso.
Thank you so much.